Kyle Grieve, welcome to Succession Stories. I am so excited to talk with you about investing and how people can get smarter on how they're investing for their future. Welcome again, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So let's talk about billionaires. You study billionaires for a living. You have a podcast and you have a wonderful following. Let's talk about that. How
Yeah.
does the average person benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it's been an incredible experience working with we Study Billionaires podcast. We've interviewed so many like just ridiculously impressive people. It's pretty cool that I get to wake up and I basically look at my bookshelf and be like, you know what, that person wrote a really, really good book and they're an incredibly successful person. Let's see if I can hop on and have an incredible chat with them. So yeah, it's been so fun, and I've learned a lot, and hopefully the audience learns a lot. And it's been an incredible experience just being able to, kind of unlock these people's minds and learn the inner workings of how they think and the differences between how they think versus, the average person. So that's been a huge insight for me, and my ability to get to research them has been incredible because that's kind of what I was doing before I even got the job, but now I get to do it a lot more, and I get paid for it, and I get to learn and really talk to these people and really understand how they're thinking.
Our topic today is going to hone in on the investment side. People listening are investing in their business, and so they are inherently investing in this large asset, which is probably the biggest piece of their net worth, especially over time as that company grows in value. And let's face it, we're talking about privately held companies, but I think there's a lot to learn in this landscape of acquisitions. If we're building our business to sell one day, because every owner is going to have a succession, let's face it, we're humans. So why not think about this big picture of the buyer landscape? And in my book, The Business Transition Handbook, one of my favorite chapters is who should own your business after you. And one of the big categories of buyers are strategic buyers. Now, very commonly, these might be publicly traded companies, which is where you come in, because this is the vortex, right? This is where you are studying what's happening in the markets, and you've seen a lot of things out there in terms of acquisitions. Have they worked? Have they not? I'll just put it out there from a controversial standpoint. There's some data that shows many acquisitions fail, like a really high percentage. And there's been multiple studies on it. Like so high, you go, what? Why are they even doing this? 70, 80% of acquisitions fail. And so does it set us up for a failure as the seller? How do we think about this? How do we inherently look at this buyer-seller landscape and say, okay, if we're studying the billionaires, and these billionaires in this case are the publicly traded companies, what are they doing right and what are they doing wrong, and what can we learn about it? So I'm going to turn the mic over to you about that. Let's just sort of set the stage based on what I just shared with the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I mean, when I'm looking at businesses that like to acquire other businesses, like you said, a lot of them do fail. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But the ones that I look at are mainly the successes. Obviously, I look at failures as well. But a couple of the ones that I find that are really successful, they do things just a little bit differently. So when you're looking at businesses that acquire other businesses, some I think a reason that a lot of them fail is a lot of these businesses are doing it just for the sake of doing it, because maybe they want to drum up interest in their business so they can put out a PR statement, so they go and spend a bunch of money, or they see competitors doing it and they just feel like they need to follow suit. But the best serial acquirers that I've come across are the ones where acquiring other businesses is literally in the DNA of their business. So they know how to do it. They have really, really good criteria, and they know exactly what they're looking for. They know exactly what they want to pay. And then just like more simply, a lot of them just buy really good businesses. They're not necessarily buying a business to try to save their own business, right? That in its own it just doesn't work very often. So, and then another thing, like you said, that they don't work very well is I think a lot of times businesses are trying to acquire other businesses where either they can synergize with the business that they're acquired, or the business that they acquire can synergize with them. Generally, it's the latter that works better. So, that's one thing to look out for and make sure that hopefully if the business acquiring you, if they want to be successful in it, hopefully that your business synergizes with them. And then another thing that I've noticed with a lot of the successful acquirers is that they buy businesses with the knowledge that the founder or the current owner will stay on at least for a few years, just to help with that transition period. Because, obviously the original business is going to know their business ins and outs better than the acquirer is. So hopefully they could stay on, share the knowledge with them, find a suitable replacement, and then kind of move off in the sunset. And I think that method works really well as well, because you're able to obviously keep the culture of your business intact. You're able to handle your employees. You're going to know them better than the acquirer is going to know them. And then the other part of that is, who do you want to sell to, right? I mean, kind of the way I look at it, there's venture capital, there's private equity, and then there's these public serial acquirers. And the public serial acquirers have advantages and disadvantages, just the same with VC and PE. But one of the things that I like is that a lot of these serial acquirers, it's in their DNA to buy a company and then never sell it. So basically that means that once you sell your company to one of these serial acquirers, your business, your culture, to some extent, your employees are all going to stay intact for a very long period of time. Whereas if you look at, PE or venture capital, a lot of times they're just trying to buy your company, gut it, try to go for a short-term boost in revenues or profits, and then just sell it. And they don't necessarily care about your culture. They don't care about your employees. So that's kind of where one of the big advantages, I think, where these public serial acquirers come in.
Yeah, and they develop a playbook. They have enough experience to know from the deal, getting the deal done, all the steps inherent with that process, but then also the integration. I always say, if you're starting to talk about integration on the day the deal closes, you're you're really falling short. And the larger the company that's acquiring probably has a well-established playbook. Have you seen any of those other characteristics around, it's not the softer side, but it's definitely a missing link, I think, for some companies when we say integrations fail, because, well, maybe there was no plan.
Yeah. So with the integration aspect, a lot of the serial acquirers that I look at specifically don't even actually necessarily need much of an integration. So for instance, one of the most popular ones that a lot of people are going to know maybe is Constellation Software. So they don't really need too much integration. I mean, obviously there's some back-end integrations, with accounting and stuff like that. But a lot of times what they do is they just buy a business and basically it's decentralized. So they just let the business operate on its own. The business that acquires creates cash flows, goes to the parent company. Parent company then redistributes that into more acquisitions, and on it goes. And, I think Constellation's somewhere around 800 acquisitions now. So, they've just been running that playbook for decades now at incredibly high success rates. It's pretty mind-boggling how good they do it. But yeah, I mean, with a lot of the integration, a lot of the businesses that I particularly look at are ones where the acquiring company can be somewhat hands-off. So like, even if you look at like Berkshire Hathaway, I mean, in my opinion, it is a serial acquirer. I mean, they don't acquire as many businesses now because, it's the business is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. If they go out and buy a company for, $100 million, it doesn't really do much, right? But in its earlier days, it definitely was a serial acquirer. And, that's what Buffett did, is he'd find really good businesses that he knew he had a lot of trust in the management that was already there. And maybe they wanted to, get a chunk of money so that they could take care of their family or quit or whatever. But he did that. And then the businesses essentially, it didn't necessarily have to, it didn't have to integrate, at a high level with Berkshire, because Berkshire just wanted the access to its cash flow. So that's kind of the way I look at it, more so than the, integrating all the day-to-day things.
Yeah, and I think there's different flavors of what we might see from a strategic acquirer. You painted a picture, which is very common, which is it's a standalone entity. We want it to continue to operate as a standalone entity within the larger portfolio. In other cases, the assets are really stitched in with the core business, and as a result, there could be consolidation of staff functions, typically back office, IT, HR, finance, things like that. The integration is obviously going to vary depending on the strategy of the acquirer, right? Because at that point, let's face it, it's not a merger, right? It's an acquisition, and the acquirer is going to do what makes sense to generate the returns they need on that investment. There are also different reasons why a strategic would want to buy this business. One of the reasons we've seen in various industries, like technology, for example, is acqui-hire, where they want the team, they want the know-how, and they may not necessarily want the business, but they want that technology and it can get applied elsewhere. Do you see any patterns of risk around those types of acquisitions?
Yeah, so one of the businesses that I own is called Evolution AB, and it's a Swedish company in the gaming industry. And I'm not going to get into it, but what I will get into is that they actually kind of experienced something similar to what you just said, where they made a lot of acquisitions that were kind of large. And I think a part of the reason that they made a lot of these acquisitions was to acquire the talent inside of the company. And they are integrating the core businesses that they bought as well, but the talent is obviously very, very important because, like a business like them, they create basically casino games. And so, they want all the best minds in the industry working for them rather than working for a competitor. So, I think acquiring, talent, or however you want to call it, IP, is very, very important, especially, but it is industry dependent, right? I mean, in anything tech, obviously talent it matters a lot, and you have to pay a lot of money to get that talent and retain it as well. So I do think that can be a problem though, just because, if you're paying a lot of money for a business, I don't know if just buying it for the talent is a smart enough idea. And from the view of an investor in public equities, we only have access to so much information. Obviously, the Evolution itself, they would know a lot better, who exactly is in that company that they want, versus me, because I don't have access to that information. So for me, I would prefer, generally speaking, that if you're going to buy a business, that it's going to come with I keep talking about cash flows, but it's going to come with cash flows that are associated with it, and hopefully they're very predictable, because that way the acquiring company knows what they're getting over a set period of time into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious about what you've seen over the years and if there's any change in the market dynamic in more recent times around deal size and interest from the acquirer. I'll give you an example on a rule of thumb heuristic that John Warlow from the Value Builder System likes to talk about, and I talk about it as well, which is the 5 and 20 rule. And the 5 and 20 rule, applied in companies that are privately held, lower middle market, is saying to them, okay, who might acquire you? Which strategic might acquire you? One rule of thumb to start is that they are between 5 and 20 times your revenue. So the reasoning behind the range is because, well, on the small side, they got to at least be able to afford the deal. So that's the 5, and on the 20, it is that they're not so big that your business is inconsequential to their results. Are there exceptions to that? Absolutely. I always say that. But I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of deal sizes and interest of publicly traded companies for companies in the lower middle market. Now, we can define lower middle market a bunch of ways. I'll say that these companies are under 500 million in revenue.
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that, because it's the deal flow kind of depends on, for me at least, the way I look at it, it depends on the serial acquirer that I'm watching, right? Because I own serial acquirers in Sweden, I own serial acquirers in Canada. So and I own one that it covers all of Europe. So it's kind of hard to say what the landscape is, and specifically because in more exuberant markets like we have today, people are a lot more likely to go out and look for deals. I mean, obviously right now credit's not the easiest to come across. So I mean, it's getting better and better. But once that credit cycle goes back to having cheaper money, I think you're just going to see a lot more deals being made. But the businesses that I look at in particular are very counter cyclical. So they don't really care what's going on in the general, macroeconomic climate. As a matter of fact, if things are bad, that can sometimes be good, because that means that they can maybe get a better price on their acquisition. If someone's just like, you know what, I've had enough, the economy is going to go in the dumps, I don't want to be part of this anymore, maybe they'll be willing to sell the business at a cheaper price. So yeah, because I look at such wide ranging geographies and industries, it's kind of hard for me to say. But I do follow, especially in Canada, a lot of the micro caps, which definitely fit your less than 500 million range. And I know right now a lot of Canadian micro caps that are on the venture exchange are the pace that they're getting acquired by, whether that's a lot of times they're just getting taken private. So that seems to be increasing right now. As for the States, I don't follow it quite as closely, so I couldn't tell you, but my guess would be it's probably pretty similar to Canada as well.
Yeah, so it basically, what I'm trying to discern is the opportunity window, right? So if we are a smaller business, do we think that a publicly traded company might be interested in us? And if you follow the 5 and 20 rule, you might rule them out and say no, because we're too small for them. And from a financial standpoint, I was wondering if you might just give kind of a rundown, basic math, not like the whole thing here, but basic math, just to kind of get our heads around, why do companies do acquisitions? What does it mean for them for acquisitive growth when it comes to enterprise value?
Yeah, so it's I guess there's kind of multiple ways of looking at it. I mean, if you look at a business like Google, I don't consider them to be a serial acquirer, but they've acquired a lot of businesses. I mean, YouTube was probably the best acquisition in history, right? So with YouTube, I think that was kind of a mixture of them finding a business that was already pretty good and kind of integrated well with Google's core business, but also just Google had the ability to scale it up. I don't think YouTube would have had by itself. So in that sense, it was a great acquisition. But a lot of the business I'm looking at, they're doing much smaller acquisitions. Kind of, that 520 rule you said is interesting, because a lot of the serial acquirers that are a little bit on the smaller side, like they might have a market cap or an enterprise value of $500 million. So they can look at businesses that are much smaller than them. Maybe they're doing $10-20 million in revenue. And that can really move the needle for the acquiring business. And then one thing that's really interesting as well with just for people that are who have a business who want to sell it, is that there's kind of this arbitrage between private and public businesses. So for instance, let's say a serial acquirer wants to buy a private business for 5 times EBITDA. The thing that's cool about that is that they can buy the private business for 5 times EBITDA. And then basically once that company joins the parent company, that parent company's in the market is 30 times EBITDA. So right off the bat, you're getting 6 times value. So, for the person who's getting acquired, if they have some sort of equity compensation, or, if they have some sort of equity involved in the deal, that can be really, really attractive.
Yeah, absolutely. There are probably many examples, and you've shared a few of the successes. How about on the other side? What are the cautionary tales that you might share?
Yeah, so I liked looking. I did a piece I wrote about Buffett's biggest mistakes. And I think his mistakes are great here, because even though obviously he's like the best investor of all time, he's made some really big mistakes. So a couple of them that really stood out to me was ConocoPhillips, which was a business in the oil and gas, and he basically thought that the price of gasoline would be maintained over a long period of time, and I think it dropped from like $100 per barrel to 40 per barrel. So he was kind of extrapolating results in a very good environment into a long period of time, which is completely normal. All investors do that. But so that kind of teaches you that, if you are making an acquisition, even if it's a small business, really look at the macro environment, because if it's had explosive growth over a very short period of time, and if you extrapolate that growth into infinity, a lot of times you're going to be very, very disappointed. And then another one would be Dexter Shoes is probably one of his biggest ones, where it was basically just a shoe company, and he liked the brand, but the problem was it got decimated by low cost competitors. And basically there was just Chinese manufacturing that could come in and create the product at a much lower cost. And due to the fact that Dexter Shoes was based in the United States at the time, they just couldn't compete. And that really, that put a big dent into Berkshire Hathaway, because they used equity to pay for that as well. And then another one for Buffett is US Air, which was in the airline industry. And, Buffett knows the airline industry is not very good, but he bought it because it had a couple interesting characteristics. But he learned pretty quickly that he probably shouldn't have made that investment. He was very lucky to get out without losing very much. And then the other one is Kraft Heinz, which everyone will probably be familiar with, where Buffett and Munger really, really liked Heinz, but then after they bought it, Heinz acquired Kraft, and Kraft was nowhere near the strength of a brand as Heinz. So they felt like they overpaid for the entire business. So obviously, if you overpay, that's bad, right? Because if you have a plan to make a certain amount of money from your acquisition, and you just throw that plan out the window, well, it's going to take a lot longer for that acquisition to pay itself off, and that's a big dent on your bottom line and cash flows.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, we have covered a lot of ground. Your insights are really interesting. I wanted you to summarize, if you can, just what are 2, 3 takeaways that you want to have our audience remember today?
Yeah, so I think that acquiring broken businesses, that's just not in my wheelhouse. I know some people are really good at that, and kudos to them. But I think, like, the way I look at it is, and Buffett talks about this all the time, is staying in your circle of competence. So if you're really good at fixing broken businesses, then by all means, keep doing that. Really focus yourself on that. But a lot of the serial acquirers that I look at, they don't fix broken businesses. They just look for really good businesses, and then they acquire them and just reap the benefits of the cash flows. So one big lesson is to really just stick with what you know. I mean, it's very important, and that's obviously industry specific too. Obviously, you're going to understand whatever industry that you maybe invest in better than anyone else. And if you understand it better than anybody else, you basically give yourself an unfair advantage. So take advantage of that unfair advantage, and make sure that you're playing a game that you can win. And then for businesses that are getting acquired, my big takeaway would be, just look at who's acquiring you. Look at the history of the businesses that they've acquired. If you look at everything they've acquired in the last 10 years, do they still own it? Or, have they sold off 90% of them? That's going to give you a lot of information. And then also just look at what if you can look at what happened to those businesses that were acquired. What happened to its culture? What happened to its employees? Are all the employees that once worked with you now gone? Those are important questions, because if you want your business to be in good hands, it matters a lot who you sell it to. And so, take those things into account.
Awesome. If people want to study some billionaires, what's a great way to follow you and all the content that you're putting out in the world?
Yeah, so you can follow me on We Study Billionaires. So it's theinvestorspodcast.com/we-study-billionaires. It's on Spotify, Apple and podcasts, and even on YouTube as well. So that's a good place if you want to find out more about billionaires. And then if you want to chat with me, I'm always available on Twitter or X. It's my handle's Irrational Markets. That's Irrational MRKTS.
Awesome. Kyle, thank you so much. And the last thing I love to ask all my guests, if there's a favorite quote you have or something that inspires you, you can share.
Absolutely. There's one that's really been resonating with me lately, which is just a simple one by Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, which is time discovers truth.
Drop the mic. I love it. I love it. Kyle, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on Succession Stories and sharing your insights.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And for our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in to Succession Stories. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and also subscribe to the Business Transition Sherpa channel on YouTube. Tune in next time for more insights from transition to transaction.